Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Sanier.
Present.
Alderman Aldrich.
Present.
Chair Spencer.
Present. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first.
We have 6 present. We have quorum.
Great, thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first order of business this morning would be the approval of the minutes from Wednesday, October 30th. I'll take a motion on the approval of the minutes.
I move.
Motion to approve minutes for October 30th.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich.
Aye.
Chair Spencer.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, we have approved the minutes from October 30th. I want to thank everyone for making time here this morning. Obviously, we are in an unusual set of circumstances, having almost completed our legislative session for the year, but to consider several board bills, a parade of them, honestly, to consider raises for city employees. This is long overdue, as we all know. Our city employees have been out of contract since June of last year, and so I'm grateful that we're taking the time finally to consider a board bill to raises to our city workers. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to my vice chair so that we can consider Board Bill 170. Okay, thank you. Board Bill 173, I'd like to first recognize several members of the city staff here. We have our budget director, Paul Payne, members from the personnel department who will be presenting on the board bill. As we are aware, there have been announcements to provide pay raises to our police department in the form of 7%, and city employees to the tune of 3%. Having received almost very little communication about it, I'd like to invite our budget director, Paul Payne, as well as members of the personnel department to come before us this morning. Well, you know what? If you don't mind, we'll go ahead and have you speak about the actual bill itself, okay, and then Mr. Payne can talk about the specific implications on the budget.
Good morning. This board bill is not a lot of changes, as Alderwoman Spencer said. The biggest changes for this is the changes to the matrix within the pay bill. So for most police, commissioned police and fire employees, the increase will be 7%. But within that, there's also a collapsing of the current matrix from a 30-step matrix to a 20-step matrix. So what that will do, some of the steps 21 to 30 will actually get a little bit less than 7, so I don't want to mislead by saying 7% across the board. That will range from 2 to about 5% for those lower steps, just from the conversion process to the smaller stepped matrix.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I realize you're taller than I am, and so you're welcome to take this, but I'd also, we need you to introduce yourself, especially to the folks at home, and so that we have a...
Okay, stop, please. Slow down.
Okay.
Could you introduce yourself and swear, so we can swear you in?
Yes.
Our
I
chair is
apologize.
moving pretty fast this morning.
Yes. Yeah. My name is John Understall. I'm the Deputy Director of Personnel. So I was part of the negotiating team that negotiated with the unions for these increases for police and fire, and this 3% for all the other city employees.
Okay, so could you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, but so help you God that you have spoken?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you can proceed.
I apologize. Yeah, so the biggest things are what we talked about, the 7% for most police, commission, police and fire, 3% across the board increases for city employees. This doesn't take away the ability for all of those employees to still get anniversary rate increase. Those increases for most of the people for the general trades and management employees in the regular schedule are 1.5%. All other employees in the police and fire, it's a little bit different by their matrix. It varies by what each year of service step represents. The other major changes to highlight within the pay bill would be there's a change for vacation and medical accrual usage. The director wanted to change and allow employees to be able to take medical and vacation leave that they've already accrued within the first 90 days. So that is a change going from 26 weeks to 90 days for civil service employees. The other real big thing to note would be within the police schedule, those people who are already within hired prior to the passage of this bill, their vacation accrual maximums will decrease from 600 to 500 hours. The difference between the rates, so any hours above 500 would be paid out one-time payment so nobody loses anything that's already accrued beyond the 500-hour new maximum. Then new employees would be held to 240 hours going forward. So that was consistent with, I think, what police had prior to local control. So within the police, that would go back to 240. It wouldn't affect any other employees, just those in the commission police matrix. So I think those are basically the highlights. I don't know if anybody, Paul, wants to speak on the budget impact now.
Before we relinquish you and bring Paul Payne up, could you talk a little bit about the process here of putting the board bill together? Just given the unusual circumstances, we're kind of past, we passed a resolution to change our board rules to allow for the introductions, and we're really grateful for everybody showing up here. But if you could just talk a little bit about the process and any other policy changes that are coming along.
So the process was one, I think a lot of the negotiation things kind of stalled without having clear numbers to negotiate. The pay is always the biggest thing. And for some of these unions, all they had was a wage reopener, so pay was really the only thing that we could address within their contracts during this period. So we were in contact with the budget division trying to get numbers and to know what those earning tax refunds would amount to. So I think that we finally got to a point now that they were comfortable with the remaining time within the fiscal year that we could sustain those types of increases without creating any situation. I don't think anybody wants layoffs when we already have difficult time filling positions.
And just for the clarity of the committee and members of the public, who's involved in those discussions, the process of preparing the board bill and the rate increases for employees?
So we have a team that's part of negotiations. So the director of operations with the mayor's office, part of our negotiating team. We've also got the director herself is the primary person within personnel. Me and another deputy are also involved. And then the various department heads. During that process, we definitely include or contact with Paul to get status updates on the budget and to know where the financial picture is. But that's kind of our team. Once we get to the point of, finalizing, we did, reach agreements with the police was the first one to reach, and then a lot of it was kind of having meetings with all the unions to inform them of, this is really all we have as far as a financial package to go by. So that was definitely within probably a 2-week period that we had to kind of hurry up and have these meetings so we could get this bill written. I was really kind of running back between writing it and going into these meetings and negotiation. So it is something that I don't think was ideal for any of the parties involved, but it is important, and I think that the city employees do deserve this raise, and it would be a shame to not pass it forward.
Thank you, John. And just my last item for the presentation before I turn it back to Mr. Paul Payne as part of the presentation. We've all been talking about a pay study that's been in the works. The pay study, was that involved in this process? Could you describe kind of that?
Yeah, so the pay study is not complete yet. So it is something, I'm hopeful that, next month or so, I hate to put finite timelines because every time I do think something's going to get done, something delays it. But we are having all the positions looked at, not just the pay. We're also looking at the classifications for all the positions within the civil service system. That's been going on for months now. We've also added a benefits component to that study, so that is kind of the last piece. We've seen pieces of early numbers, but we really don't have any report or anything final to go by. But I am hopeful, like I said, within a month we get a better picture of that, and then once we do, we can start communicating what that looks like and what we need to go forward, because I do anticipate that that will be a big expenditure to try to be competitive. So.
Thank you, John. So just to be clear, we are preparing a whole set of ordinances and pay raises outside of having finished, just 1 month short of having finished the pay study that we have commissioned to guide us on what our employees should be paid. With that, I'd like to bring up Mr. Paul Payne from the Budget Department to talk about the fiscal impact of the board bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Vice Chair and members of the committee. Good morning. You should have received a fiscal note. Yes.
It's hard for her. I just want you to know, it's hard for her. So could you raise your right hand, please?
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Now you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. You should have received in your packets some cost estimates associated with the proposed pay plan, and I would a one-pager which sort of details for the next 3 years going forward, and it breaks out each component of those pay increases.
Where do we find that?
I forwarded that to the clerk yesterday. You should all have that. So I'm going to be working off of that sheet. Is that something I can pull up, or? It is attached to the fiscal note. It's on the back. I see it on the back page. Yeah, that's the document.
We got it.
Yeah, that's it. Right here. The last page. Yep. Yep. Can I work from that? Okay. Okay. So for the current fiscal year, as personnel just mentioned, we're talking about the balance of a fiscal year. This assumes for the remaining pay periods. As you know, there's 26 pay periods in a fiscal year. This would assume that this gets approved by the end of February. That would leave 8 pays. So that first column says how much of the cost would be for the current fiscal year, which is FY25, and it identifies each pay provision there. The police uniform pay matrix of $1.6 million. There was also provision within the police department's provisions to conduct a vacation buyback to bring down the number of outstanding hours. They have some excessive hours on vacation at the police department, and that would cost a $1.1 million. Then the fire uniform steps at 7% would be $760,000. Now for everyone else, the 3% was $1.3 million. And I should note that I've also included in this estimate the non-civil service employees. Now, as you know, we have separate pay bills for all of them, and they're not technically part of this one bill. But for purposes of budget, I always include that simply so you have a total picture of what the estimate is. Because typically, those other bills will mimic what we're doing here with the civil service pay bill. So that's why that's there. So that gives a whole impact this year on the general fund of $5.3 million. Now, as you know, there are also other funds. Those also follow the pay provisions because civil service is beyond this, just the general fund. That includes the special grant enterprise funds. In that one, you have the fire uniform, because they do have a fire unit at the airport. They get the same increase they have elsewhere. That was $80,000. And for everyone else, that, including airport employees, water division grants, and et cetera, would be just under $1 million. So that would be, in total, would be $1 million for those special grant and enterprise funds. So it's estimated that those costs would impact FY25, all-inclusive general fund and special funds at $6.3 million. So then the question becomes, and as we look towards, and we're about to start preparing for FY26, how does this translate into what impact it's going to have on the next year's budget? And that would see the total annualized cost for FY26 and again, beyond, because pay raises are recurring. That would be $18.8 million for all those categories. In the general fund, $4.3 million for the special and grant and funds, for a total cost of all those funds of $23.1 million. And so that basically lays out the cost impact. There's always questions about, well, can we afford these kinds of increases? What impact that's going to have on the budget and such? Actually, when you think about it, there really is no good time, simply because we're always struggling with how to budget things. But then on the other hand, as personnel could tell you, we have vacancies of somewhere around 22% of the workforce right now. So you're trying to balance between what is affordable versus what you need to do to fill your position. And I think that's what this is trying to do. And so there is no easy answer. I do expect it's going to be a tighter budget next year, and that's going to be something that we're going to have to look at. But this is also a component piece that has to be incorporated into that. And so that's what I have today.
Thank you, Paul. Just real quickly before we turn it over to just to finish out the presentation, could you just describe, we've got 18.7, 23 million. I mean, if you could just talk about where in the budget you hypothesize this would come from, or what work has already been done to identify the sources of the city's budget, so just so we know there's some clarity on the due diligence done in preparation for this.
Sure. As you know, for those who have been around for a while, typically with our budget, it begins July 1. So we've just started the budget process for FY26. What that entails is that I looked at the mid-year revenues based on what we've received in the first 6 months of the fiscal year, and I issued a mid-fiscal year report on that. And based on that, I do a preliminary estimate for what we could anticipate for next fiscal year. And then based on that, we issue budget allocations to the departments, which they have received, and they're working on their budget requests as we speak. Incorporating into that budget allocation, we identify not only the revenue side, but the expenditure side, anything we need as a fixed cost, or some costs that may be going away. For instance, let's say election board. Last year, because it was election year, we had to budget $1 million for the elections. Next year, we don't, so we take that out of the base. And there are other things, whether it's debt service payments or what, we identify to say, okay, we know how to adjust that. We take all that into account, and then we issue those budget allocations. The budget allocations contemplated this being incorporated into the FY26 budget. And that does not mean that there won't have to be reductions next year, because we're going to be looking at revenues, particularly the earnings tax, which we've taken a hit on this year, what the recurring piece of that is, and that's going to affect next year's budget. So I do expect departments are going to have to be looking at their budgets to make sure that they can fit within their allocations. What I contemplate, or what I would anticipate, is that we need to be adjusting salaries to, that's just the reality of trying to get positions filled. We may be having to scrutinize the number of positions funded. And I think that's something we're going to have to be looking at a little bit more closely, because it's sort of a trade-off. I mean, you want to fill all the positions, but and keep them funded. Something has to give somewhere, and I think that's one of the things looking at as this year progresses. So I'm not going to say it's not going to be a tight budget, because it will. But that's the kind of deliberation we do every year.
Thank you, Paul. And could you just speak real quickly on the final numbers? I haven't seen new final numbers on the earnings tax rebates that were given, that have been dispersed thus far.
Sure. Through the midpoint of the fiscal year was just over $40 million. Now let me backtrack, give you a little bit. If you go back to last April when I'm standing here before you, there was no knowledge about what those amounts may be. So we made a conservative estimate going forward. So we were projecting, okay, what would be the loss on a recurring basis? We estimated $21 million on the earnings tax, $5 million payroll tax, $26 million combined, and that's what we incorporated in the budget. Subsequent to that, you had the court case decide that, okay, we need to be getting refunds, and in addition to that, we were going to go refunds 3 years back. Well, that's a little different of a calculation when you talk about it. But that it's okay, and everyone decided that's the right thing to do, you do it. So you take your lumps this year. But the question still remains, what is it going forward? And that's where we're at today. So I suspect it's going to be somewhere in the teens, perhaps on a recurring basis. We'll know a little bit more in the fourth quarter because FY23 is still outstanding. They did FY20 or the calendar year 20, 21, and 22. Those are all pandemic years, and so they were a little bit more severe on the refund. So it should be a little less for 23, but I suspect that's probably where we're going to end up, and we're going to have to incorporate that into FY20 budget. But that's where we stand today.
Madam Vice Chair, that concludes the presentation portion of Board Bill 173. I don't know if you want to turn it over to questions of the members of the committee, but I'd be happy to answer them. Unless you would like to swear me in first. I do swear.
She just can't let go. Proceed, Chair.
I'm happy to entertain questions from the committee, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Alderman Oldenburg, do you have any questions?
I don't. I want to thank everybody for their time.
Ms. Vance Wells, do you have any?
I have no questions, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Saunier, Alderwoman Saunier, I'm sorry. Do you have any questions? We can't hear you.
Sorry, also no questions, just thank you to everyone for their work.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I do have questions for Mr. Payne, Paul Payne, Director Paul Payne. So I know with the increases for police and fire, at least on the police side, there's going to be a like a cut of 100, so law enforcement to be able to kind of make these pay raises happen, correct?
Correct.
Do you see that happening across the board for other city departments? And I know there's one thing that we've been bringing up on the budget committee, at least me and Alderwoman Saunier, of, we have all these vacancies every year. We continue to fund in policing and other categories, and why don't we, if we're never going to fund those, why don't we cut those to be able to give raises to employees? Do you see that happening for like refuse and corrections? Because they always position for more than what they ever can feel.
Right, and that's gotten more, I want to say more severe over the last few years. Usually, you always have vacancies, but the number of vacancies has been going up simply because you haven't been able to fill them. And we'll budget some sort of salary savings because we know they're not going to fill them. But ideally, you don't want your budget to get out of whack and have positions authorized that are never going to be filled either. So as I mentioned earlier, I think this trade-off in terms of, as we look more closely at what the salary structure is and how we adjust it, is going to have to be offset at some point with a serious look at the position authorizations and whether or not we realistically intend to fill them, and if not, then we take them out of the budget. I just think that's a trade-off you have to make.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're kind of conservative when it comes to the budget, which is good with the city purse strings. I mean, how do you expect the FY, I guess, 26 budget to look with these pay increases across the board. But we do have, and yes, go ahead.
Okay, you're talking about next fiscal year.
Yeah, so I guess so would this 3% be part of the budget? Will it be?
It would have to be incorporated into the budget itself, yes.
Okay, and it'll be incorporated to our existing budget now, and then we will kind of see more of a long-term impact on the budget process that happens, well, I guess now with all the departments and.
Correct, yeah. So as I laid it out here, you've got a partial fiscal year impact this year, but then next year you got the full year impact. So, excuse me. So you've got the fiscal year impact next year, full impact, and that will have to be incorporated into the budget. And yeah, it's going to make it a tighter budget, no doubt, but you're going to have to look. But I think what you bring up in terms of the number of positions, I think that's one area we're going to have to look at and say, realistically, if we've been carrying them all these years, what is the true number that we really need for? And it doesn't mean they can't have vacancies. You always have vacancies. But how many? And what's the realistic? If you remember last year when we came through this process, we did corrections and we sort of brought them down. They still have a lot of vacancy, but we brought them down somewhat. And that's some other departments are going to have to start looking at.
Gotcha. I just want to make so within our budget, it's not like the world is falling. We do got a lot of vacant positions that, like you said, we don't want to start cutting those, but.
Well, I will say it's going to be tighter. I mean, so
You say that every year.
But well, let me put this in context. In the last few years, we've had the benefits. It seems like having all these funds that need to be distributed, or for instance, whether it's ARPA or this recent discussion on RAMs, it seems to have money drop in our laps. Behind that is this recurring budget that we have to keep an eye on that is not necessarily always going to be balanced. We've had the benefit of a growing economy that's kept we've had operating surplus and such in the last few years, but that's not the normal course of events. It's usually been a struggle each year. I see next year being a little bit more of a struggle in trying to get it balanced. So, and I expect the departments, if you look at the budget document this year, it was $100 million over the allocation when they started, because that's what the requests are. We're not going to entertain those next year. That's just not reality. And so it's going to have to be focused on what it is the priorities are, one of these being pay. If we want to incorporate this, what are we going to do to balance the budget? And it's going to have to be looking at positions.
Gotcha. Thank you, Director.
Director, real quickly, do you have additional questions? Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Go ahead. I thought
Go ahead. I'm done.
I have a question. Budget Director, I know, and me and you have been talking for years about our budget and how we need to look at streamlining the budgets. And I know in defense of a lot of department heads, they have come in to look at how to cut. But you kept telling, and I'm asking a question, did you not keep warning us we were going to get into this situation because of the economy itself and us not getting the revenue that we need to keep us sustained? And so I know that you have been talking, but I think this time budget is going to be very difficult for department heads. But I don't really see it. Maybe you might see something different. I don't see it being difficult because if you are 20 positions short, I don't see it being difficult for you to cut your budget because you don't have those positions in the first place. Am I correct?
Well, I think the question you're going to, and if I was department head, I'd say that, is that they're going to be telling you that we need the positions, we're just not able to fill them. And so the question then becomes, are we cutting them? If you cut them out, then you're saying that they're not there anymore, so that you're not intending to fill them anymore. Not just you can't, it's just you're not intending to fill them. That's a different decision. It's an operational decision. And so that's something you're going to have to weigh. We have to weigh when we look at all the budgets in total. I think in terms of what some changes were, the revenues had been growing in the last fiscal year. They've slowed a little this year. We're not in recession, so we're not. That would be a lot worse if we were. But the earnings tax hit was a significant hit. I mean, so even if you lose $15 or $20 million on a recurring basis, that's going to be significant. And so that's just right there is already, even if you had a normal budget, and which was marginally, you'd have to make some cuts here or there. An earnings tax reduction is something that's real, and it's going to something you have to adjust for. And so that just puts another challenge on what otherwise might be a normal budget year.
Thank you. Sponsor, do you have anything to add?
I do, thank you. And just to put a little more color on it, I think it's important to note that our revenues, generally speaking, are projected to increase between 1% and 2%. Which is a figure below the increases that we're preparing here. I also want to point out that many, not all, but many of the vacancies in city departments are accounted for in the budget through a negative forecasting within department positions themselves. So you guys, the committee, right? All of you who are very, very seriously paying attention, would remember that when we budget this, right, when we look at our budgets, we include and we account for vacancies. So I think that I just want to set the stage for what we're going to be considering next year as a difficult budget cycle, because the revenue increases are not equal to the raises that clearly our employees deserve, and the workforce needs to be able to attract and retain talent. I also want to say that I don't believe this is the end of this conversation. We have commissioned and paid for as a city a pay study, which will be completed in a month, which not only looks at what positions can and should be paid to be able to attract and retain talent, but also benefits that a professional workforce demands to be filling our position. So as we move through the next budget cycle, we're going to have some difficult questions to answer and difficult positions to kind of really work through. This is not an ideal time, obviously, to be considering this, considering we have a case study right around the corner, but I do think it's a first step in making sure that our employees, our workforce is moving in the right direction of hitting that sort of regional average for what we are paying them to do. And with that, I don't know, Madam Clerk, were there any members of the public who wanted to speak on Board Bill 173?
Who was Jason Spickerman and Dan Clark.
If any other members of the public wanted to speak, please feel free to sign up. You're available. What is happening? There's so much air happening.
Okay. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, but so help you God?
I do.
And identify yourself, please.
Name is Jason Spiekerman. I'm a resident of Ward 5. Today I'm actually here as a representative of the Governors Union. As a representative for that union, we have roughly 600 to 700 union city workers. If I'm not mistaken, John can probably answer this better. I'm pretty sure that we have more workers under our union umbrella than any other one union. So we have a lot of people that we're speaking for today. Trying to stick with my notes because I get off the rail and then I'll be here for 2 hours. So we did talk about how the city contract has been expired for over 6 months. It's been 7 months now. In that time, I was repeatedly told what I kept calling was the excuse of the earnings tax as being the reason why the city could not negotiate a contract, look at all the department needs. They just kept saying it's the earnings tax, which sure makes sense, but when I kept pressing, what's the reasoning behind it, it was just the earnings tax. So there was that piece. 2 weeks ago, we found out that there was a 3% raise across the board. I was very hesitant to agree with that just because I knew what our membership wanted, our workers wanted. That was not what we discussed at the table. I went back to them. They were not happy, obviously. The next day, I reluctantly agreed to the terms for one reason, and that is because our workers need something on their paychecks. 6 months now has been nothing for them. If you want to call their 1.5 merit increase something, tell that to the person making $35,000 a year. That is nothing, in my opinion. So we have that part. I did agree to those terms under protest simply because that is not what the union wanted. It's not what we wanted for our people. It's not what was proposed to our city, but we were never given that opportunity to discuss those terms. I guess moving forward, we have to remember that most of our city workers are not at a living wage. So this 3%, I don't care if we have money or not, it's 3% is garbage. We should be proud that we live in the city, and we can't keep neglecting our workers. Our workers are understaffed, undervalued, overworked. They've been getting this 3% or less. We can't catch up. There's a reason why people are moving to the county, private sector. There's much more opportunity there. Our city is going to fall apart if we can't retain our workforce that keeps our needs going, and we have to do better. I think together we can all roll up our sleeves, right, and work together with the city and the workers and do something good and positive and show them that we do value them and that we need them to keep our city going. I think that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and we appreciate your comments.
Next, we have Mr. Dan Clark.
Good job. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Daniel Clark, and yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, members of the board, Ms. Chair, Mrs. Vice Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak on 173. I am Dan Clark. I am the president of the Firefighters Local 73. We represent firefighters, EMS workers, EMS dispatchers, and fire dispatchers. I agree with everything that my brother in labor, Mr. Speakerman, said. This was definitely a rushed effort. As we do appreciate the rush to get raises because we're all overdue. Inflation's happened, cost of living's huge. We all know medical insurance is crazy. People need raises. We had the same thing. We were told we would be back at the table in October, I believe. Never happened. We continued to wait. I will say, at least, it sounds like the carpenters or whoever, all the groups that Mr. Speakerman does represent got the option to look this over, and it was somewhat of a negotiation. We did not. We got this put in front of us. I said, give me 12 hours to show my members, and I was told, you're not here for negotiation. This is what you're getting. According to Administrative Regulation 174, which is collective bargaining, that is not the spirit of collective bargaining. This was jammed down our throat. Again, we're happy to have something, but that's not how you bargain with your employees. That's not how you treat your employees. No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anybody else, Ms. Clark?
We have Sean Sharif.
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you raise your right hand, please?
I can.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, identify yourself, please.
First of all, thanks, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Sean Reap. I am Vice President of the St. Louis Police Leadership Organization, and we collectively bargain for officers with the rank of lieutenant in the police department. Kind of mirror what the last gentleman said. Our first earnest negotiation began on January 23rd. And to my knowledge, we had another meeting on the 27th, and it was concluded shortly thereafter without us reaching an agreement. Our biggest bone of contention was constricting. I know that the Police Officers Association agreed to constricting their matrix down to a 20-year because they have younger members. Our members are different. We were definitely against taking our pay matrix from a 30-year max to a 20. And that was our biggest bone of contention. So of our members, there's 43 lieutenants. 18 of those lieutenants have over 30 years on. That's over 41%. And those 18 members would be getting a 2.8% raise on this pay bill, which is less than every other city worker. So I appreciate your time. I just wanted to speak on that and put that on the record.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. That will be all.
Ms. Sponsor, you can proceed.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. A bit heartbreaking to hear from representatives of our city employees. You know, pay raises should be a time of celebration, and we should be one we feel proud of. I am happy to move this forward, and I realize that we have to, but certainly want to recognize that this is not an ideal process. And I want to, you know, while I am the primary sponsor of the bill, have not been part of the negotiations of the process. And as much as this was shoved down your throats, it was also shoved down ours. And so I want to first and foremost apologize on behalf of the city, because I do think at the end of the day, it's important that we negotiate in good faith, with proper time, with the respect to our employees, that proper negotiations should take. And you know, I'm hopeful with our pay study coming out that we can revisit the conversation soon, and one that those you know, that our employees can support. But with that, Madam Chair, given the constraints that we have, we're at the absolute end of session. We have already called one special meeting just to be able to move this bill through, and recognizing that we're in the 11.9th hour. And I want to recognize the work of our budget director and our financial analyst for doing so much work on all just to accommodate this, as well as our staff here at the board. You know, we don't typically meet this week in committee, so our clerk and our clerks, many of them, and our STL TV for being able to accommodate us here. And with that, Madam Vice Chair, I do ask reluctantly for favorable consideration of Board Bill 173.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, we pass Board Bill 173 out with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous row.
Thank you. On previous row.
No objections.
Us, we're getting ready to add. Did you say object, Alderman Velasquez?
I said no objections.
Okay, thank you. So we have no objections to previous row. And so now we have Board Bill 173 has been voted in. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Board Bill 173 is passed with a do pass recommendation. I have now before us, we have a slew of board bills to consider for the county offices. And with that, I will recognize Alderwoman Vice Chair on Board Bill 174.
Thank you, committee, for hearing Board Bill 174. This is the proposed board bill for the appointment and salaries of certain employees in the Recorder of Deeds office. I do have today the Recorder of Deeds here to speak and his staff in regards to their bill, and you do have a fiscal note attached to that. So if that would be allowed, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, or thank you, Alderwoman Boyd. You're free to proceed with your presentation so long as we continue to swear everyone in.
Thank you.
I'm just kidding. Thank you.
Thank you. You already sworn in, huh?
Yeah.
For the whole session? Yes.
Oh, you know what, Alderwoman Schweitzer, I didn't recognize that you were not here. Ms. Boyd, I guess I'm very good. So, thank you. Okay, Please proceed with the presentation.
Oh, just want to swear me in, Alderman Simpson?
Are you sworn in? Do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Yes, I do. Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank the chairwoman and the vice chairman for such a speedy meeting and allowing each of our county office holders to participate in pay raises.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you to.
for the public, could you introduce yourself
Thank you.
first?
I'm Mike. Thank you. I'm Michael Butler, the Recorder of Deeds for the City of St. Louis, and thank you to each and every member of the Budget Committee. Thank you to Alderman Pamela Boyd for sponsoring a bill for pay raises for the Recorder of Deeds office, and of course, thanks to the budget staff, the committee staff, and the clerk for all their speedy work to make this happen today, right before the session ends. For 6 years, I've had the honor to be the Recorder of Deeds of the City of St. Louis. The St. Louis City Recorder of Deeds office is the largest Recorder of Deeds office in Missouri, with a dedicated staff of a little under 40. We safeguard critical documents that define our community's past, present, and future. We are official custodians of real estate transactions, ensuring property rights are securely recorded, and we issue and serve as a custodian of record for marriage licenses, in addition to providing birth and death certificates. Under my administration, this office has transformed into a state-of-the-art model of efficiency and service. 6 years ago, visitors in the office often waited 20 to 30 minutes for basic services. Today, because of some of the raises you've passed in the past and because of the raises we'll pass in the future, we consistently process requests in under 5 minutes. Google reviews rank us as the #1 recorder's office in Missouri, and we fortified security protocols ensuring sensitive data remains protected. In addition, we have substantially increased efficiency, productivity, and increased revenue to the city's general fund. Public accessibility has substantially increased to this office by increasing online access, making vital services available online, and expanding our office hours. This progress stems in a large part from the talented and dedicated members of our team. To maintain this status and to maintain this standard, I urge for your support of Board Bill 174, which adjusts salaries of the Recorder of Deeds office to fulfill a 3% cost of living increase for our staff. In a competitive job market, as has been described with folks before me, this adjustment is not just fair, it's essential to retain the skilled professionals who drive our success. Approving 174 reaffirms our shared commitment to excellence in public service and decent pay for the employees of the Recorder's Office. Thank you for your time. Any questions? Yes. Yep, we gave you one. We do have, do you want to present their amendment? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, everybody's moving so fast this morning. So I'm asking the committee, I have to do a committee sub. You should have it on your desk, Amendment 1 to the board bill. Everybody see it?
Ma'am.
He's talking to you, everybody.
I do.
Y'all have it?
I believe so, yes.
Everybody see
In the,
it?
in the committee, in the
Alderman
Google Drive?
Spicer, did you have it?
Okay. This is. I believe we have a 174 combined. That's all I have in the Google Drive. I don't believe it's in the Drive. Let me see here. Madam Vice Chair, you know what we could do? While we're working that out, we have so many bills. We could take a pause on this and bring before us one of the other bills unless you have a preference.
Do we have any other speakers to speak on this bill?
I'm refreshing the Drive here and I don't see it, and so there may be a problem. Do you see it?
No, they're working on it.
I have some hard copies. Do you? I need the hard copies.
Madam
you know
Alderwoman Boyd, what is the substitute change?
Oh, it just says they changed the date because they have before immediate. The start first pay period following approval by mayor.
Okay, so if you don't mind, do you have the amendment here?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fairly simple amendment which changes the date, and it would create a committee substitute, is that right? Or could we handle it through an amendment?
Right, so it's just to strike out June 22nd, 2025, and then it was changed to with the start of the first pay period following approval of the mayor.
Okay, I understand. It sounds like we could handle it as a simple amendment to the bill rather than a committee sub, and therefore we could handle it with a paper copy.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt that Amendment 1 to Board Bill 174.
Second. Please repeat that, please.
So I'll entertain a motion. What we'll do here, I'd like to first make sure that we send this to committee members via email, even if it's just done through a screenshot. I realize it's a very simple amendment, but just for consistency, the amendment is the proposed board bill concerns the appointment and salaries of certain employees in the Recorder of Deeds office pursuant to Section 82-6110 of the revised statutes of the state of Missouri and repeals Ordinance 71174, which allocates certain other employees with a grade rate. It simply changes the date. I don't know, where's the date that it changes to, Alderwoman?
So it goes from June 2nd, 2025, and you scratch that out and put per the approval of the mayor immediately.
Okay, what we have here is just a summary and doesn't have the amendment. This is not the amendment. Do you have an amendment?
That's the.
Oh, I have a different piece of paper.
I was like, what?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So there was a motion made for the amendment, and it was made by 14 and seconded by 7.
Correct.
Madam Clerk, do you mind just reading the amendment? Not all members of the committee, so we don't have any legal problems later.
They're putting the amendment in the drive as we speak.
Okay.
So you want the amendment number 1 read?
Yes, please, and that way.
Amendment number 1 to Board Bill number 174 by Alderwoman Pam Boyd to amend said Board Bill page 1, line 5 as follows, beginning on page 1, line 5, strike, quote, June 22nd, 2025, and cert lieu thereof with the start of the first pay period following approval by the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to.
Motion's already on the table. I motioned it and the Alderwoman seconded it.
I think she didn't hear it. That was what I-
7 seconded, yes.
No, she heard it.
I heard it. We ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
We're calling the roll on the First Amendment to Board Bill 174.
Madam Clerk, I was entertaining a motion to adopt amendment number 1 as read by the clerk to Board Bill 174.
And that was 14 and 7.
Right.
Correct.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich.
Aye.
Chair Spencer.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Alderwoman, you're recognized to proceed.
Thank you. So do we have any other speaker for the Recorder of Deeds? No other speakers? Okay, on that note, I'll ask for favorable consideration for Board Bill 174 with necessary amendments.
I'd like to make a motion that we pass Board Bill 174 as amended with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous row.
Thank you.
Hearing no objection to previous rule, Board Bill 174 as amended has passed with a due pass recommendation. With that, I'll recognize Alderwoman Schweitzer on Board Bill 175.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Today in front of us is Board Bill number 175, which is relating to salaries of the employees within the Treasurer's Office, very similar to all the bills we've heard today and the ones we'll continue to hear. This is a county office, so there's a separate bill. The Chief of Staff, Shirley Richick, is here today to speak.
I'm
for the
sorry,
judge.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderwoman Boyd,
That's okay.
we wants to know if there going to be any public comment on Board Bill 174.
I don't believe we had any public comment on 174. If there is any public comment on 174, we'll entertain it now before moving on.
Dalen Robinson stated he would like to speak.
Specifically on Board Bill 174?
Dalen Brown, I'm sorry.
Mr. Brown, if you don't mind identifying yourself, and do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Hi, my name is Dalen Brown, and yes, I do. Awesome. I would like to thank the Recorder of Deeds office for coming in today and notifying us of the great work that you all are doing for the city of St. Louis. I am not opposed to the request therein in budget for you, but in accordance to what the city of St. Louis is doing with the Recorder of Deeds office in the federal regulation to record the deeds therein of all properties that therein are listed in our city, and to back them up with federal files and hard drives that are sent not only to state and to the federal level. I would like to know if systems are still in place and if we need to put in budget for systems to be updated to adequately adhere to the regulations of which we are therein mandated by to proceed with by the federal government. Other than that, thank you for the great work that you're doing, and please allow us to know if it's time for an update to our systems. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll get, considering we have passed Board Bill 174, but I do think the systems question is something we'll address in the next budget cycle very soon. So thank you for bringing that concern for us. With that, Alderwoman Schweitzer, you're recognized on 175.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As I was saying, this is for the treasurer's office, and the chief of staff of that office is here to speak on the bill and answer questions. Thank you.
If you don't mind, to identify yourself and swear to tell the whole truth and
Sure.
nothing but the truth.
Sure. My name is Shirley Ruchik. I'm Chief of Staff for the Treasurer's Office, and I do swear to tell the whole truth. Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and committee members. We filed this board bill to follow along with the rest of the city to reward our employees with a 3% increase for this budget cycle.
And with that, I will entertain, do you have any other speakers on behalf of the president?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. No, this is my entire presentation.
Thank you. I will entertain questions from the committee. Alderwoman Boyd.
I have no questions. Thank you for coming.
Alderman Oldenburg.
No question.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Sonier.
No questions. No questions, thank you, sorry.
Alderman Aldrich.
No questions.
With that, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on 175?
We do not.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 175 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous row.
Hearing no objections to previous row, 175 passes with a due pass recommendation. And Alderwoman Schweitzer, you are now recognized on Board Bill 176.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. Board Bill 176 is much the same as the previous, except this time for the Office of the Collector of Revenue. Here with me today, I have the Collector of Revenue himself, Mr. Greg Daly, and also his Chief of Staff, Mr. Stoff.
Great, thank you. You're recognized to proceed with your presentation.
Thank you so much. They are here to give a brief presentation and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Mr. Daly, just identify yourself, and if you don't mind, just to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. My name is Greg Daly. I am the Collector of Revenue for the City of St. Louis. I would like to thank our sponsor for taking up this Board Bill 176, and I would also like to thank the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, as well as the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, for recognizing the simple fact that we have some hardworking individuals in our city. 93 of those happen to be in the Collector of Revenue's office, and I am very proud to stand here and support this particular bill, Board Bill 176, for a pay raise for the Collector of Revenue's office.
Thank you. Do you have any other members, or do you have any other portions of your presentation, Madam?
Thank you. Everything is in the board bill, and I appreciate your consideration today.
Okay, do we have any members, speakers to speak on Board Bill 176?
We have none.
With that, I'll entertain questions from the committee. Alderwoman Boyd.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. My husband ironically has said 2 days ago that they need to take your office for customer service of the year. So thank you, because that's a lot coming from him.
Absolutely.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Saunier.
No questions, just thank you for your work, making sure that we get this done as quick as possible.
Alderman Aldred.
No questions. Thank you for being here, Collector.
I have just one question. Collector, I have been dying to know almost my entire lifetime, what does FX stand for?
I'm sorry.
FX. Gregory FX Daly. What does the FX stand for? I've just been dying to know.
All right, so that is my fault.
FX Daily, I write the checks every.
It's that Irish Catholic thing.
It's the Irish.
Francis Xavier.
Francis Xavier. You know, people ask me all the time, and I don't know what to say. I have never known the answer to that.
Absolutely.
Good to know. My Catholic name is Job, so there you go. All right, thank you. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 176 with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Previous row.
Hearing no objections to previous roll, 176 is passed with a due pass recommendation. Alderwoman Schweitzer, you are recognized now on Board Bill 176.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee, and thank you for making sure we all know that one very important piece of St. Louis trivia with what the FX stands for. We'll move on now. Yes, 177, again, very similar to the last two board bills that I've had before you. This is the 3% raise for employees within the parking division. And again, the Chief of Staff of the Treasurer's Office, which also takes care of the parking division, is here to speak if Director Ruchik would like to come forward, or Chief of Staff, rather, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. We would like to, for our parking division employees, follow along with the rest of the city and reward our employees with a 3% increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other members here as part of the presentation?
No, Madam Chairwoman, thank you.
I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Velazquez.
No.
Alderwoman Saunier.
No questions, just thank you for doing this as quickly as you could. Thank you.
Alderman Aldridge.
No questions. Thank you for being here.
Okay, and with that, I will entertain a, you know what, Mr. Brown, if you don't mind, do you have a specific question, specific on this? Okay, I might ask you if you, well, you know what, go ahead, and I was going to say you can go ahead and speak. All right, awesome. Since you've already been sworn in, we'll.
Awesome. Thank you so much for showing up today, Parking Division. I was wondering, along with the budget report that therein is needing to be set in place for the Parking Division, have you had anyone come out for the physical observations on whether or not our Parking Division there needs updating, where in fact cement potholes or cracks are in place, if the different levels are there and still stabilized? Do you have adequate housing for those that are there and sitting at those parking spaces to there and ensure that the adequate operations of people coming in and out of that system, where in fact people are parking, is there and set in place? Do you all need new uniforms from the city? Within your budget, I would also like to see the needs for that particular parking garage or placement itself. But sure, on the 3% raise.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I think you bring up some good questions with regards to paying for potholes and the upkeep of garages, but I think we'll handle that next year in the traditional budget cycle, because right now we're just going to consider this issue of the raises, but hopefully you participate in that hearing process next year as well. Alderwoman Schweitzer, you're recognized to close.
Thank you. I appreciate your favorable consideration of this board bill, and I'm very grateful for the time of everyone here on the committee to make sure that these pay increases move through speedily, and to everyone who worked to put these board bills together in time for us to do this week. Thank you.
And with that, I'll entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 177 with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous row.
Hearing no objections, 177 is passed with a do pass recommendation. Alderman Aldrich, you are recognized for Board Bill 178. Oh, you know what, Alderwoman, you know what, since you're part of the committee, I will recognize Alderwoman Laura Keys on Board Bill 179. My apologies.
Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
So I am here on behalf of the Circuit Attorney's Office, Board Bill 179, and with me here this morning is Steve Capizzi, which is the First Assistant, Leanne Mosley, Community Engagement Director, and Becky Rentschler, who's the Operations Manager, to talk about their pay increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Mr. Capizzi, please identify yourself and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us all.
I swear to tell the truth. I'm Steve Capizzi. I'm the First Assistant over at the Circuit Attorney.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us here this morning. Thank you, Alderwoman, for sponsoring this bill. I represent the Circuit Attorney's Office, which has approximately 132 employees for the city of St. Louis. We obviously prosecute all the state level crimes that occur in the city of St. Louis, and we really appreciate the opportunity to speak before you and to present this bill. Our employees are working hard, and a lot of them are new to the city because of the rebuilding we've had to do of this office. But we appreciate everything you do, and we appreciate the board taking the time to listen to our board bill this morning.
Thank you. Alderwoman, did you have any other members from the for your presentation?
Thank you so much. So for that, I would ask for your favorable consideration and a do pass recommendation.
I just have a question. I know this is straight 3% across the board. This is a little different than the county offices because we fund your office. So could you speak to what the fiscal impact of Board Bill 178 would be? Or excuse me, 179.
I believe it is a straight 3%.
Straight 3%. Okay, thank you.
For every employee, yes, ma'am.
Helpful to understand. Thank you. I know that we had some challenges to make sure that we had pays commensurate with going rates, and we did some changing around in your office, so that's helpful. And with that, I'll entertain questions from the committee. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman.
No questions.
Alderwoman Saunier.
No questions.
Alderman Aldrich. With that, I will entertain a motion to...
No questions. I appreciate the Circuit Attorney and all the work you guys do. I look forward to continuing to work with you.
I will entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 179 with the do pass recommendation.
So moved. Second.
Madam, hearing no objection, Board Bill 179 is passed with the do pass recommendation. Now I will recognize Alderman Aldrich on Board Bill 178.
Thank you all this morning.
Not I asked. Where you been? Alderman, you are recognized on Board Bill 178.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Board Bill 178 is the pay increase for the Sheriff's Department. You know, I'm really excited to have the new administration here who will talk about their pay increase today. I have today Blake Lawrence, who's the Chief of Staff, as well, who's being accompanied by, if you know him, Stebo, that is here from the Sheriff's Department. Since the Sheriff is, took an office in January, I will say there's been a lot of vacancies in that department, and I know he's worked very diligently with his team to actually fill all those vacancies. And before I bring up Blake Lawrence, who is the Chief of Staff to the Sheriff, I would just, also ask that all members, please, I know the Sheriff wanted to be here for the very first kind of budget increase, because I know that was one of the promises, but just please keep him and his family in your prayers. But with that, I will bring on up Blake Lawrence, who's the Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Alderman.
If you don't mind, to introduce yourself and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Blake Lawrence, Chief Counsel, and Administrative Director to the Sheriff. Thank you, Alderman. I'll be brief. I'd like to take first opportunity here to get this on the record. As our new administration gets up to speed, We've had a tremendous outpouring of support from all over City Hall, all over the city, Representative Alderman Aldridge, President Green's staff, the Recorder Butler's staff, Mr. Lanon's staff has been fantastic, the Comptroller's office, and Mr. Payne and staff as well. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge everyone who's helped us get up to speed, and we are, as Steve said, we're about 90% there, so we're getting there. As the Alderman mentioned, we, for the first time in about a decade, have fully staffed, so we have maxed out our FTEs as of this month. That was a campaign promise, and we've got a bunch of applicants in the office that are yet to be reviewed, and we're hoping to expand that, but that's probably a discussion for later in the budget process. We're also less top-heavy. While the number of deputies has gone up, the number of administrators currently in place has gone down by 2, and we're doing our very best to make it work. And this 3% increase is going to help quite a bit. I also do want to mention to the Budget Committee that we are reforming our post-certification requirements, make it a little bit more budget, how shall I say this, to reduce turnover, to make it a little bit harder for people to qualify for those post-certification class spots. So, thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarity, this was a 3% across the board on those positions. Do you have any other members to present on the board bill? I'd like to turn it over now to members of the committee for questions, starting with Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg.
Nope.
Velasquez.
No questions. Thank you.
Sonier.
No questions. I just appreciate all the work that the sheriff is doing. You didn't name me, but I have certainly been a supporter and have let him know that the office needs. Happy to support the transition.
And with that, I will entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 178 with the due pass recommendation.
Second.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, 178 is passed with a due pass recommendation. Thank you. And with
Thank you,
that,
Madam Chair. Members of the committee, thank you.
I will recognize Alderwoman Boyd on the last bill of this hearing, not to be confused by the last bill to be considered today, because we have a second hearing this afternoon. But Alderwoman, you're recognized on Board Bill 180.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you hearing Board Bill 180. I ask for your favorable consideration for Board Bill 180 for the Medical Examiner's Office. And so, do we have any speakers?
Madam.
I have a speaker.
You have a speaker. Excellent. Thank you, Madam.
And I'll let her introduce herself.
That's okay.
And she could swear her in.
180. Thank you. If you don't mind, identify yourself, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm Tara Rick, Director for the Medical Examiner's Office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Boyd. Thank you. First, I just want to thank members of the committee today, Chair, Vice Chair, for your support and consideration for Board Bill 180, which is similar to the bills that you heard today. It is a 3% across the board raise for our full-time staff. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is the only change. But I just kind of wanted to give a little backstory about our office for those who may not have that type of information. The Medical Examiner's Office, we're charged with investigating all deaths that occur under our jurisdiction in the city of St. Louis. So we are a smaller office. We have 15 full-time staff, and we have 8 part-time staff. The majority of our staff are medical legal death investigators and autopsy technicians, but we do have a great team of support staff as well, other than myself, the director. We also have a records custodian, an executive secretary, a custodian who maintains our facility wonderfully, and a medical transcriptionist. I couldn't be more proud of this kind, compassionate, hardworking, dedicated team that works tirelessly day in, day out for this quiet work, if you will, that our office does. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the committee might have, but this Board Bill 180, for your support and consideration, is just for a 3% across the board.
Thank you. We appreciate the work you do. Madam Vice Chair, do you have any other members for the presentation here? No. Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over now to members of the committee for questions. Alderman Oldenburg.
No questions, but just thank you, Director, for the work you do, and being here today to testify.
Alderwoman Velazquez.
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Saunier.
No questions. Thank you for your work.
Alderman Aldridge.
No question.
Hearing no questions, I will entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 180 with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Previous row.
Hearing no objections to previous roll, 180 has passed with a due pass recommendation. Madam Vice Chair, you're recognized.
Yes, I just wanted to make one comment about the medical examiner's office. I think they are the quiet giant of the city because people forget about them. And so she did explain the staffing that they have and the people that are involved in it. And I think that's something we need to applaud because the way things have gone in our city, they have taken on a very large task. And I really don't believe they anticipated this. So I wanted to congratulate them for staying steadfast in regard to the work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Alderwoman. This concludes our regular order of business for the Budget and Public Employees Committee. We do have an additional board bill that needs to be considered today, given constraints on notification to the public. We had to push that back to a separate hearing starting at 1:30, which we will conduct. So I'll look forward to seeing you all again here today in just a couple of hours. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. No, we have to adjourn and start anew. It had to be noticed. So we'll take a motion. I'll take a motion to adjourn unless we had any other pending orders of business, Madam Clerk? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Second.
And that we concludes the Budget and Public Employees Committee. So we had to be noticed. It has to be a separate hearing. Yeah. Okay.